Lately, I've been struggling with a dilemma when it comes to talking about music or bassoon playing on this channel. Although the absolute main hindrance to making regular videos on YouTube has to do with the fact that I just have so little time to dedicate to research and the filming and editing that are required to make these videos, at least at a standard that I'm happy with. But the next hindrance is a certain element of imposter syndrome. And in this video, I'd like to get into that a little bit. So, are you ready for this?
It's morphin' time! Brontosaurus!
And don't forget, if you like this video and other videos on this channel, to hit the subscribe button and make sure that notifications are on so that you can find your way back for the next one. While there is no doubt that I am living a very decent life as a freelance bassoonist here in Switzerland, my credentials as a pro bassoonist are highly out of the ordinary. By far, I earn my performance income from engagements on historical instruments, and more often than not, I am playing continuo rather than first or second bassoon. It's a different orchestral dynamic, a different knowledge base, and a different skill set, one which isn't in the mainstream bassoon education system. And although I'm sure that my perspective on continuo playing would be considered valuable to many, the fact that I am not first bassoon of a serious philharmonic orchestra makes me hesitate when I have something to say about bassoon playing or bassoon repertoire, which is outside what many would consider early music. Obviously, I present a unique perspective. I work on a daily basis with 18th century ornamentation and improvisation, and I'm well versed in some early bassoons, which were contemporary to some of the most important bassoon repertoire. That experience can generate some valuable insight, but mainstream bassoon education is about creating philharmonic first bassoonists. Here's the orchestral excerpts, this is how you play them, now go win this job. And the first player plays the solos, they're the section leader, they earn the big bucks, and therefore that's what they are training you to be. And that's where what I have to offer can be considered subversive. Because, well, what if I told you to play that audition repertoire in a way which wouldn't match the mainstream taste? Most of the people who've studied or taken a masterclass with me who come from the modern bassoon world do well to keep two minds on everything we work on. There is the historical perspective, and then there's what they would play in the mainstream classical setting. In practice, there isn't much, if any, real conflict in taste, except maybe in cadenzas and tempi. To many players, especially in North America, early music is considered an amateurish thing, where musicians who aren't good enough to play pro in the mainstream go for a second chance. Now, maybe this was the case somewhere at some time, but it certainly isn't today where I live. The early music scene here is freelance-based, it's highly competitive, and the bar is set very high. There's more to it than that, of course, but I'm trying to point out that the reality is not how some make it out to be. Take, for example, an unfortunate situation that I myself fell into just before I moved to Switzerland to do my graduate work about 11 years ago. I applied to a musical association in my hometown of Ottawa, Canada, for a scholarship, and though they offered 10 scholarships that year, and there were only 4 applicants, I was awarded 10th place, meaning I got very little money or support. When I spoke to a member of the committee about their decision, they said that they would be wasting the association's money if I was given 4th prize, because early music, they felt, was not a professional activity. Quote, the Baroque bassoon was broken, and the modern bassoon fixed what was broken. That's an exact quote. The calling card of most bassoonists is the symphony orchestra in which they play, or the conservatory or university where they teach. And without a particular institution's backing, you might understand why I might feel particularly hesitant to speak openly about certain topics in bassoon performance. As a freelancer in early music, therefore, I find it most important to establish my credentials through recordings. It would come as no surprise then if you notice that I've self-produced a few recordings this year of late Dulcian repertoire with my friends Andy and Zora. I'm also going to record my first CD in November, and I'm planning more music video sessions throughout the next year. So as you can see, I'm certainly ramping up my personal recording schedule as we come out of the pandemic. But I am very concerned about meeting my own potential in whatever I choose to publish. And thankfully, I'm not somebody who posts videos of my own performance on a daily or weekly basis. I would go crazy. But I recognize that there are a number of bassoonists in my generation or in a younger generation who have made the bassoon quite visible on social media. And given that the pervading format over the last few years has become the Instagram reel or the TikTok video, I decided to speak to a few bassoonists about how they manage the necessity of regular performance publications against their own performance potential. Are you always putting something up that you're proud of?
No. I would say more than half the time I am actually not proud of what I'm putting up, because I struggle with this. I've always struggled with this. I struggle with perfection, as a lot of us do. And I hear every single micro imperfection in my playing all the time. And of course, before I post something, I have to make sure that it's not just that, like 1 minute clip. It's like a whole 5 minute clip of me practicing that I've had to listen back to. And I just I get in such a negative headspace, and I'm like, well, should I even post this? Because it's like, I can hear that I'm out of tune in this note, and this wasn't with the right articulation, and it just goes on and on and on. So I catch myself in that spiral a lot of the time. So yeah, more than 50% of what I post, I would say I'm not proud of.
When you're publishing at this frequency, are you always putting up something that you're proud of?
I would say in general, yes. And once a week is, as you said, it's still kind of a lot, but for me, that's what's made it manageable, is that it's only once a week. And the clips sometimes are only 10 seconds long. So that also gives me more opportunity to get what I'm playing to what I consider an acceptable level. I mean, sometimes it's not as good as it would be if I were recording, say, an audition tape for something, but I still feel like, it's an accurate representation of good playing from me, from what I consider that I can do. So I think, yeah, the thing that has really helped is that even though it is on this regular once a week schedule, that limit has allowed me to create what I consider to be good every single week.
Have there ever been moments where you've recorded something and you've decided not to publish it at all?
Yes, way more now recently than in former years.
Why more recently than before?
Well, the longer that I've had my Instagram, the more, I guess, paranoid is the honest word. I've become about people judging what I'm putting out there, and people, I'm afraid that what I'm doing is not enough, and it's not good enough to be the perfect product that I see so often on Instagram. And so over the years, I've really fallen into that habit of the same spiral of am I doing a good enough job with this? Like, are these principals going to see this excerpt that I put and know that it's not up to perfection? And do I have to post something that's up to perfection? So it's just like the mind game that keeps going back and forth that I've been really struggling with recently.
So would you say that in the quote unquote, in the beginning, when you started doing this, when you thought of who your audience was, it did not include potential, I don't know, let's say potential professional network people?
Yeah. So when it first started, it was clear that the people who were following me were like my close friends who were not even bassoonists, as well as when my audience really started to grow, it was like beginners and high schoolers and amateur bassoonists. And that was a much more approachable audience to me. And then as it grew and grew, I started noticing bigger names popping up, and people were liking my videos, and it's like, whoa, like this is crazy.
And that's where the anxiety started to build up.
Yes.
Where you've recorded something and you've said, okay, this is not good enough, I'm not going to publish it at all?
I don't think so. And there have been errors. Like I remember this one specific excerpt that wasn't a well-known bassoon orchestral excerpt where I recorded it, I put everything together in the video, which is I recorded the audio separately. So it takes a little bit of time, line up the audio with the video, put in the score examples up top. And I realized after I had done all that I had left out an entire beat of a measure. Just, I don't know what was going through my head, but I left out this beat. And I decided I was just going to leave it because I didn't want to go through the work of getting everything set up to record again, recording it, and then doing all the editing again. So, whether that's truly acceptable, I don't know, but nobody commented on it. I don't know if anybody even noticed. It was towards the end of the clip, and it wasn't a piece that people would have been familiar with. So you could consider that having my standards slip a bit, but for me, it was too much work to go back and do again.
Because the audience on Instagram, I would argue, is not really the same as one which obviously you would meet at an IDRS conference. Let's say classical music literate or hyper literate. Does that change how you decide that you've met the threshold to publish?
At the end of the day, no, because if I do post something, it's like the main obstacle is myself and my mind games. So of course that's all, I've thought about that. There is like some sort of relief when I do post a video, because it's like, okay, all this fear and all this negativity that I've held within this 1 minute video is just now out there, and it is what it is, and it will be what it will be. And so with that, it actually brings a sort of sense of like, okay, like people who are really aware of what I'm doing may have some comments, but whatever, that's their opinion. I have my own comments, that's for sure. But then of course there are the people who don't know anything about like the excerpt that I'm playing or the instrument that I'm playing. And so I really try to focus on that, and the help that it could bring to someone who just doesn't know or isn't aware.
Does that actually change the goalposts for meeting your own potential?
In general, I would say no, because it doesn't really change my idea of performance and like my goals of playing the bassoon, which are to make music, basically. So I don't think that really changes much. I think the only thing would be in an audition scenario. I would probably be a little bit more picky than I am with Instagram. But in terms of audience, no, not really. I think my goals are pretty much the same: to be engaging and say something musically.
You might be asking yourself what the real point of this video is. Why bring Cornelia and Morgan into it when I'm really talking about myself? In fact, as I was preparing this episode, I wasn't quite sure what I was really trying to say to begin with. It was only during my conversation with Morgan that it dawned on me that simply by speaking about this, we are letting you know that we do think about what we present and how we present ourselves in our own media. We don't necessarily meet our own standards 100% of the time, but knowing that we do grapple with what we put out there will hopefully color your experience when you see the next Instagram video bassoon orchestral excerpt. One of the difficulties about presenting advice on digital media, which of course I do on this channel, is that I don't get to see the reactions, the consequences or effects of that advice. So when I have something to say here, I take quite some time to think about how to articulate it. The script for this video, for example, has taken me 5 evenings to write and edit, and I don't know if I will ever feel like it's finished. Ultimately, the only person holding you back is yourself. So long as you feel that you have reached a point that you have something to say as an artist and have developed the necessary tools to be self-critical, as well as believe that you have good taste, then there should be nothing stopping you. But that doesn't mean that you won't question what you do or what you have done, or whether others will appreciate it. I hope that this video has been helpful to you. If you like watching these videos, then don't forget to consider supporting my online work by becoming a patron via Patreon, or by making an order at bassoons.ch. Thanks very much. Take it easy. Bye-bye.